The galactic chamber shimmered like the inside of a dying star, a vast hall carved from translucent crystal and suspended in orbit above the molten tides of IRX-9. It was here, beneath the glacial gaze of 1,000 species, that the Galactic Council met to deliberate on matters of power, peace, and pride. Their voices echoed in dozens of tongues, some felt more than heard, and others pulsed directly into the mind. At the center of it all stood High Marshal Kareth of the Sarthak Dominion, towering and broad-chested, his war hide adorned with the scalps of 10 conquered worlds. He did not speak softly. He did not need to. Humanity is a footnote in this galaxy, a species that cowers behind treaties and hides beneath the skirts of its fragile planet. Kareth turned slowly, ensuring every eye was on him. Let be known, Earthlings are cowards. No protest rose. Not from the Vesh, whose world's humanity once defended from pirate incursions. Not from the Irani, who owed their plague cure to human medicine. And certainly not from the silent Earth ambassador seated among the observers, his jaw clenched so tightly his cheek twitched beneath his skin. The vote came swiftly, 17-3. Earth would be relegated to observer status, barred from voting, barred from military support resolutions, deemed non-combatant by galactic decree. The label cut deeper than any sanction. The Earth ambassador stood. No fanfare. No rebuttal, just a simple message, delivered with an eerie calm. Your insult has been received. Humanity will respond in kind. With that, he left the chamber. No ship moved from Earth's armada. No war fleet surged into hyperspace. Days passed. Then a single message arrived, directed to the Council's combat adjudicator. We will send one. Laughter followed. The Sarthak, always eager for blood, proposed a fitting challenge. Let them prove their mettle on the proving grounds of Xerxes Prime. Kareth sneered, tusked grin gleaming. Let them endure the world where champions die screaming. Xerxes Prime was a death sentence. A jungle moon wrapped in bioelectric storms and populated by predatory flora and fauna that hunted by scent, motion, and mind. No council warrior had lasted longer than 20 hours there. It was a place that broke the strongest, consumed the unworthy. And Earth would send one. The drop pod struck atmosphere in a column of fire, trailing smoke and promise. Council observers watched from orbit, sensors trained on the precise coordinates. No name, no rank, no insignia, just a man in matte black combat armor, seated in the cockpit as if awaiting a subway stop. He emerged in silence, rifle across his chest, helmet sealed, visor blank. His gait was measured calm. Not a tourist, not a fool. Each step betrayed the weight of training, movements not just rehearsed but owned. He surveyed the jungle, the dripping vines, the distant howl of something massive and hungry. And then he moved. The Council's cameras watched him disappear beneath the canopy. For hours, nothing. Then a feed returned. A flash of motion, a hiss of leaves, a blur of something lunging from the shadows. The human rolled, tucked, and fired. A creature twice his size dropped mid-charge, twitching once before stilling. He did not pause to celebrate. He vanished again. Beginner's luck, Kareth grunted. But as the hours became days, the narrative shifted. The human, identified only by his call sign Reaper, did not merely survive. He adapted. He turned traps meant for him back on their creators. He built shelters from shredded bark and creature hide. He ate what he killed, slept lightly, moved often, always watching, always waiting. On day 2, the Sarthak launched a covert interference. A bioengineered hunter beast, something not native to Xerxes, was dropped into the jungle. It had infrared vision, venomous barbs, and a cerebral cortex wired for prey tracking. 6 hours later, it was found disemboweled, hanging upside down from a tree by a wire snare. Next to it, a small, blinking camera and a scratched line of text carved into bark. I see you. The council chamber fell into an uneasy silence. The Sarthok fumed, but said nothing. On day 3, Reaper found the first drone. He approached it directly, eyes unreadable behind the visor. He stood there a moment, expressionless. Then, slowly, he tapped his chest with 2 fingers. It was not bravado. It was a message. I'm still here. It was then that something shifted in the watching delegates. The Vesh began whispering in admiration. The insectoid representatives of the Z rewatched the footage with reverence. Even the cold-blooded warfolk of Runak remained still, their compound eyes focused with unsettling stillness. They were beginning to understand. But back on Xerxes Prime, there was no celebration. Reaper continued moving through the dense green, marking paths, mapping predator patterns, disabling hidden traps with a surgeon's precision. He bled once, just once, when a spine rattler struck from above. He crushed its windpipe with his boot, dressed the wound with sap and bandage, and kept going. In the quiet of his camp, he finally spoke, not to the drone, not to the jungle, but to himself. They don't remember what war tastes like. His voice was low, gravel wrapped in steel. They think we're afraid because we don't posture, because we don't show our teeth unless we mean to bite. He cleaned his rifle, checked his ammo, and set a tripwire across the clearing. They'll remember now. On day 4, a full Sarthok elite recon unit entered the jungle to observe, armed and armored, supposedly neutral. They never made it to the observation point. Each was found later, stripped of weapons, bound, and hung from vines like ornaments. Not a scratch on them, not a sound heard, no bodies, no deaths, just humiliation. Earth's ambassador sent a single update to the council. Violation of neutrality acknowledged. Response delivered. No further comment. In private, Kareth slammed a clawed fist into the crystalline wall. But publicly, he said nothing. And still, Reaper hunted. On the morning of day 5, he climbed a ridge above a toxic mist valley and stared into the rising suns. The drones caught his silhouette, small, singular, yet somehow vast in presence. Like a storm about to break. The camera zoomed in, focusing on the emblem etched onto his shoulder plate, a stylized skull within an anchor, emblem of the Navy SEALs. It had been decades since the SEALs operated openly. Their missions had become shadows within shadows. Myths, ghost stories whispered among pirates and black ops syndicates. Now one stood as humanity's only response. One man in a galaxy's deadliest crucible. And he was winning. The council gathered again, unease hanging over them like a storm cloud. No one spoke of cowardice anymore. Not aloud. Not even the Sarthok. In their silence, Reaper moved. And far beneath the canopy, where the light barely reached, something else stirred. Something worse than beasts or betrayal. But Reaper didn't fear it. He was already hunting it. And the galaxy, once so sure of humanity's weakness, began to wonder. What if humanity never needed an army? What if they only ever needed one? The jungle of Xerxes Prime pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. Even in stillness, it breathed, a heaving, predatory presence that watched as much as it grew. Beneath its canopy, the thick, moss-coated trees twisted into shapes that hinted at ancient violence, and vines writhed like muscle memory. Everything here had evolved to kill or be forgotten. It was not a world for mistakes. Reaper had made none. He moved like he belonged to it now, his matte black armor layered with streaks of mud, sweat, and spore dust. The jungle had marked him, tried to consume him, and failed. He knew its sounds now. He had memorized the chirps that warned of sky-born ambush predators, the tremors that preceded the movement of tunnel striders beneath the earth. Every scent, every flicker in the shadows, spoke to him like a language. He replied with silence. At mid-light, he crouched on a gnarled branch, studying a clearing below. His HUD flickered briefly, picking up a heat bloom. Not prey, not natural, A machine signature. Drone. Unmanned. Sarthak make. It hovered dumbly above the brush, scanning for movement, its cloaking field blinking out with each passing minute. Likely a relay drone for something larger nearby. He adjusted his grip on the rifle, slid silently down the tree, and vanished into the undergrowth. 10 minutes later, the drone's feed went dark. The Sarthak had stopped laughing. In orbit, the Council's observation team monitored the footage with increasing unease. Delegates no longer treated the human survival as spectacle. Reaper had become a question they weren't ready to answer. How had a species with no fleets in Council wars produced this level of operative? Why had they chosen not to lead with force until now? The Sarthak didn't care for questions. They wanted control. Kareth authorized another escalation. Deep within their warship, engineers activated a gene-forged predator, Skelrex 99, a six-limbed nightmare grown in acceleration vats and wired with advanced threat recognition AI. It was stronger, faster, and resistant to most jungle toxins. It would hunt the human, crush him, redeem their pride. It was dropped from orbit in a containment pod wrapped in flame, impacting the jungle floor like a meteor. Reaper was already moving when it landed. He hadn't seen the pod, but the animals had. The jungle had gone quiet. Predators vanished into burrows. Even the wind shifted. He moved toward the disturbance, not out of curiosity, but readiness. He had seen too many battles, and not with the first shot, but the mistake made when no one expected a second. He reached a ridgeline and saw the blackened crater steaming below. The pod's doors split open. Something massive had crawled out, its footprints still hot and thermal. Clawed, bipedal, heavy, efficient. He tracked it. Hours passed. Reaper laid traps without stopping, rigging spike-fall snares with salvaged cord and venom-drip branches. He wasn't trying to kill it. Not yet. First, he needed to learn how it moved, how it hunted. He circled its projected route, staying low, collecting clues. Sap scraped on its claws, shattered brush, spore patches it avoided. Intelligent, or at least trained. His pulse never changed. At dusk, he found the first remains, a tunnel strider, torn in half, bones scattered across the undergrowth. Too clean for a jungle kill. The predator was dissecting threats, not just removing them. Reaper crouched beside the carcass, fingers tracing the puncture wounds. He whispered, "Military." The thing was testing the jungle the same way he was. Assessing variables, gauging threat levels. That made it a problem. He planted another set of traps, false trails, motion lure drones, shallow pitfall grids, and doubled back to high ground. He settled behind a split-trunk tree that resembled a gaping mouth, set his rifle across his lap, and waited. The predator arrived sooner than expected. It moved like oil over stone, quiet despite its size. Its hide shimmered with adaptive camouflage, blinking through shades of jungle green and dirt brown. But camouflage meant nothing to Reaper. He was watching for movement, weight displacement, heat bleeding off in waves. When it paused near the motion lure, he activated it remotely. A burst of clicking sounds and synthesized movement. The predator turned. A second later, a spiked log swung from above. It missed. The creature leapt aside with inhuman speed, then turned sharply toward the tree. It hadn't seen Reaper, but it had sensed the trigger point. Then it moved toward him. Reaper fired. The first round struck the predator in the left shoulder. It staggered, surprised by the velocity. The second clipped its knee, sending it to a crouch. Reaper shifted position, then felled it. The trap hadn't worked. The damage hadn't slowed it much. The creature lunged. They collided in a whirl of claws, elbows, and brutal economy. Reaper rolled with the impact, using his momentum to flip the thing over his shoulder. It hit the dirt hard, rebounding fast. Reaper dropped low, knife out, driving the blade into what he hoped was a secondary lung. The creature roared, not in pain, but frustration. Its tail whipped around, catching Reaper across the chest. He flew back, hit the trunk with a jolt that cracked bark and bruised bone. His HUD flashed red. Fracture detected. Rib. He stood anyway. The creature charged, but this time, he wasn't there. He'd left a stun charge where he'd stood. A concussive burst that detonated as the thing passed over it. It screamed, disoriented. Reaper surged forward, grabbed its upper jaw, and drove his knee into its throat. Once. Twice. It stopped moving. He stood over it, chest heaving. His suit registered internal bleeding. He acknowledged the alert, silenced it, and dragged the body toward the nearest drone beacon. By morning, the council received the footage. A single image, the body of Skelrex, 99, gutted and hung upside down like a field-dressed animal. And beneath it, etched into the dirt, "I'm just one." Council silence was no longer quiet. It was reverent. The Vesh requested a formal review of Earth's observer status. The Z submitted a petition to share military intelligence with humanity. Other species, those without war fleets, who had survived by diplomacy or hiding, began requesting Earth liaisons. They had seen enough. Earth had sent a message, but the Sarthak weren't finished. Kareth, now nursing humiliation like an open wound, called for emergency council privileges to be revoked. He cited violations, claimed Earth had tampered with the rules of the trial. He demanded Reaper be extracted, examined, interrogated. No one supported him. Even his allies looked away. In the quiet that followed, Earth's ambassador stood. His voice was calm. "This council called us cowards. We did not reply in words. We replied in action. The man you've watched is not our finest. He is not our only. He is simply willing." The word echoed. Willing. Reaper, wounded and weathered, returned to the high ridge where he'd first surveyed the jungle. He sat down, eyes on the twin suns rising again through the haze. The jungle didn't scare him anymore. It recognized him now. He touched the patch on his shoulder again. The anchor. The skull. Not a warning. A promise. And somewhere in the canopy, above and beyond the eyes of the galaxy, the jungle breathed with him. No longer hostile, merely aware. He wasn't done yet, but they were beginning to realize. He hadn't come to survive. He had come to be seen. Night fell heavy on Xerxes Prime. Unlike other worlds, its darkness was not the simple absence of light. It was a presence unto itself. Alive, listening, breathing against the skin. The bioluminescent flora blinked in cautious rhythms, warning of movement deeper in the jungle, and the air tasted like copper and ozone. Storms were building somewhere far above the canopy, but Reaper remained grounded. Still, listening. He lay prone beneath a thicket of moss-covered roots, watching the clearing through his scope. His breath was shallow, measured. The rib fracture ached, but he embraced it. It meant he was still alive. Pain wasn't weakness. Pain was data. The jungle around him had changed. Not in terrain, but in behavior. The predators had gone silent. The wind refused to pass. And even the ever-curious insect colonies had retreated into their hives. Something else had arrived. Something ancient. Unnatural. He scanned for heat signatures. Nothing. No movement. No AI ping. But something was out there. Reaper knew the Council had watched every second of his mission so far, and he knew their silence was no longer about whether he'd survive. That question was dead. What they watched for now was what humanity would do next. Would they retaliate? Escalate? Seek revenge for the insult hurled in the council chamber? He gave them nothing. Just work. At 0300 hours, the predator revealed itself. It didn't charge. It didn't growl or snap or roar. It simply appeared, stepping out of the dark like it had always been there. Tall, emaciated yet somehow massive, its limbs elongated, plated in ridged obsidian chitin. No eyes. Just a smooth, mask-like face reflecting faint flickers of starlight. It moved as though gravity applied differently to it. Fluid, dreamlike. Reaper didn't shoot. He understood something in that moment that sensors could never register. This thing didn't come to fight. It came to judge. Somewhere high above, far from the dirt and blood, Council analysis drones scrambled to identify it. None could. It matched no known genetic structure. No planetary origin. Not Sarthak. Not Vesh. Not Runak. Not even hybrid tech-spliced constructs. It was something older. The jungle had birthed it. Or perhaps kept it. Reaper stood slowly. His rifle remained lowered. He didn't know what protocol dictated in moments like this. But then, that was the point. No one had ever reached this far. This wasn't the end of a trial. This was a layer deeper. A final measure. The creature tilted its head, then took one step forward. Reaper mirrored it. The air around them pulsed, thick with static and unspoken understanding. This wasn't combat. This wasn't performance. This was right. Trial by endurance, by presence. Then, without warning, the creature lunged. Not a strike, not an attack, but a movement designed to provoke reaction. Reaper didn't flinch. He remained still, breath steady, gaze locked. The creature froze mid-motion, hovering with one clawed foot inches from his chest. Its faceless mask seemed to consider him. Then it stepped back. A test. Passed. Around them, the jungle exhaled. A flock of shriek wings passed overhead, their wings slicing the quiet with rhythmic clarity. The storm above cracked open, casting silver light down through the trees in sharp slashes. The creature turned and began to walk away. Reaper didn't follow. Not out of fear, out of respect. Some battles weren't about winning. They were about being worthy to fight in the first place. He returned to his camp hours later, having left no trace. He repaired a tear in his armor, ran diagnostics on his neural implants, and cleaned his blade with a cloth torn from the edge of the Sarthak unit's own banner, a small reminder of a past skirmish, folded quietly in his pack. He made no recordings, no transmissions, but Earth's orbiting ambassador relayed a message to the Council. Trial complete. The Council, as a body, did not respond. But Earth's allies had begun to speak again, quietly at first. The Vesh proposed opening joint training programs with human operatives. The Runak offered to share their centuries of silent combat doctrine, an honor previously extended only to two other species in recorded galactic history. Even the reclusive Namari, who had not spoken aloud in council chambers for 300 cycles, requested a private audience with Earth's diplomatic envoy. Only the Sarthak remained bitter. Kareth demanded one last measure. If Earth wishes to be warriors, he said, then let them face a warrior. A formal duel. One Sarthak champion. One human. Combat rules. No exoframes. No orbital strikes. No AI assistance. Just skill. Earth didn't hesitate. Reaper was recalled from Xerxes' prime. His body bore the map of his ordeal. Scarred flesh beneath the suit, cuts along the ribs, tissues swollen with infection, eyes rimmed with fatigue. But he said nothing. He saluted. He boarded the transport. The duel was to take place on neutral terrain, Sindara's Divide, a moon of broken stone and scarlet ash. It was an old battlefield from a long-forgotten war. The perfect place for a new legacy. The Sarthak champion was Mornak, a behemoth of scale and rage, bred from war tribes and forged in blood. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, carried a glaive the length of a shuttle, and had slain over 200 enemies in ritual combat. When they met face to face, Reaper offered no greeting. Mornak grinned with jagged teeth. I thought the human would be larger. Reaper removed his helmet, revealing a face that didn't smile, didn't blink. Just watched. I'm enough. They faced off as the Council's eyes watched from orbit. No escape. No misunderstanding. The duel began. Mornak struck first. A sweeping blow meant to end the fight quickly. Reaper ducked, slid beneath the glaive, slashed the tendon behind the champion's knee. Mornak howled. Reaper didn't pause. He circled, stabbing the other leg, moving like a shadow in a storm. Mornak bled, screamed. Reaper said nothing. He waited. Mornak lunged in desperation. Reaper rolled sideways, grabbed the haft of the glaive, and drove the butt end into the Sarthok's throat with a sickening crunch. Silence followed. Then thunder, distant but real. A storm, or something else. Mornak fell. Reaper stood over him. Not victorious, simply present. The duel was done. Back aboard the council chamber, the vote was retaken. Unanimous. Earth status was restored. Not as observer. Not as auxiliary. As full member. Combat verified. Strategically indispensable. The ambassador stood again. We did not ask for respect. We earned it. Reaper returned to his ship without fanfare, without a word. His face unreadable, his eyes unfazed. But in the darkness of the transport, as the engines hummed and the stars stretched into lines, he finally spoke, to no one in particular. They'll never call us cowards again. And somewhere far behind them, in the jungle depths of Xerxes' prime, something ancient watched the stars and remembered the man who didn't run. The ship coasted into Earth's high orbit with no fanfare, no ceremonial flybys, no greeting vessels waiting to mark his return. That was how Reaper preferred it. Even now, the mission completed, his name whispered through the stars, he desired no celebration. The Council's judgment had shifted, but Earth hadn't changed. The world below spun as it always had. Blue, fierce, stubborn, alive. He descended in silence, landing at black Mesa installation under the cover of darkness. The landing pad was slick with rain, the lights low and utilitarian. Waiting for him was General Thorn, a broad man carved from the same relentless stone Reaper himself had been shaped by. His face was deeply lined, his stare impassive. Reaper approached and gave a curt nod. Mission concluded, he said, voice rasped by too many nights breathing alien atmospheres and recycled oxygen. Thorn didn't return the salute. Instead, he studied the man before him, scanning his posture, his eyes, the subtle tension behind every muscle. Reaper hadn't returned a hero. He had returned altered. You're not the same, Thorn said, not accusing, not congratulating. Reaper shrugged. Neither are they. The Council had changed. The galaxy had changed. Lines had been redrawn, threats reassessed. But Reaper? He still operated by the same principle. Do the job. Survive. Complete the mission. Anything else was noise. Inside the briefing chamber, the lights were dimmed, and the wall screens displayed Council surveillance feeds, diplomatic communiques, intercepted chatter. Earth's sudden surge in interstellar reputation had stirred reactions across the systems. Alliances were shifting. Former detractors now approached Earth with cautious curiosity, suddenly eager to forge bonds. Your trial was more than symbolic, Thorn said, gesturing to the feeds. You've destabilized a 1,000-year hierarchy. I just followed orders. Bullshit, Thorn replied, not unkindly. You changed the game. Reaper remained silent. But deep down he knew. It hadn't been about diplomacy or ego or retribution. It had been about proving what humans were. Not just to the Council, but to themselves. Outside, the rain intensified, tapping rhythmically against the window panes like the steady drumbeat of war that had always echoed through human history. Reaper looked past it, toward the mountain ranges beyond, dark silhouettes against the horizon. Somewhere out there, the next threat waited. It always did. The Council's approval had not ended danger. It had invited greater ones. An encrypted transmission broke the quiet. Incoming from Namari space. Thorn opened it. A Namari elder appeared, cloaked in gray robes that shifted like smoke. His voice was like wind over ice. Earth's warrior has passed the rite of void. Our seers have witnessed the trial. We extend invitation to the Starforge." Thorn raised an eyebrow. Reaper didn't speak, but his pulse quickened. The Starforge was myth. Even among seasoned commanders, it was a whisper spoken in disbelief. A place where weapons of legend were born, where ancient knowledge was not taught, but tested. "What do they want?" Thorn asked. Reaper already knew. They wanted to see if the man who stood toe-to-toe with death itself was ready to hold the kind of power most species fear to possess. He nodded once. Preparations began. There was no applause, no parades, just silence and duty. Humanity had always known the cost of growth, and Reaper carried that burden with the same precision he carried his blade. 3 weeks later, his ship pierced the veil of the Namari Nebula, guided not by coordinates, but by whispers through encrypted void chant. The Starforge wasn't on any chart. It existed in folded space, a relic of pre-Council civilization. Some said, even pre-time. He emerged into orbit around a dead star. There, floating amidst asteroid fragments and black glass moons, hung the forge. A station the size of a continent, shaped like a collapsing cathedral. Twisting towers, gravity-defying arches, structures that shimmered with energy too old to be understood. It didn't look built. It looked grown. The Namari did not greet him. Instead, a docking tether latched to his craft, and gravity fields pulled him inward. Inside, he was met by silence. Not emptiness, watchfulness. The forge was alive in ways machines shouldn't be. The walls pulsed. Lights adjusted to his presence. Pathways revealed themselves not by construction, but by intention. He walked, and the station responded. Room by room, test by test, the forge peeled him apart. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, philosophically. It showed him echoes of battles he had fought, people he had killed, innocents he had failed to save. It whispered doubts, taunted purpose. It asked again and again, "Who are you?" Reaper gave no answer. He endured. On the 10th day, he arrived at the heart of the forge. Before him stood a weapon, not forged by hands, but grown from the station itself. A sword, black as the void, humming with potential. It shimmered like liquid night, edge vibrating on a frequency that bent light. He reached out. The sword resisted. Flames ignited across the walls. Not literal fire, but burning visions of worlds dying, friends lost, enemies laughing. The guilt he buried was dragged to the surface and set ablaze. Still he reached. His hand closed around the hilt. The fire vanished. The sword calmed, accepted, and with it, the station spoke, not aloud, but through sensation, through memory and meaning. He was not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most brilliant, but he endured. He carried the weight. He stood when others broke. And that was what made him worthy. The sword pulsed once, then fused into the sheath on his back. A perfect fit, not an upgrade, a recognition. When he returned to Earth, the world didn't know what he'd done. They saw no difference. No reports were issued, no announcements made. But those in power saw it in his stride, in the way he moved, the way he watched. He was no longer just a symbol of Earth's strength. He had become its reckoning. Years passed. Reaper became a figure of legend. The man who answered only to silence. The one who fought not for glory, but for gravity, for the quiet assurance that humanity would never be ignored again. The Council never called Earth cowards again. They called them something far older. Guardians. And when the next great threat emerged, from the abyss between galaxies, from a realm without stars, it was not the Council that made the first move. It was Earth. And they sent just one man. The same man. Still standing. Still silent. Still enough.